I get sent stories all the time that I can't necessarily use in typical videos. So today I thought I'd put together a few stories that you guys have sent in that are a bit different from the typical scary stories from the woods. So, let's get into these creepy tales. If you have a story that you'd like to share in a future video, be sure to send it to the email or the website that you can find in the description down below. I'd love to share your stories. Let's get into these tales of terror that'll be sure to keep you up tonight. I have had a few strange experiences in my 16 years of life, and I will gladly share some of them, but this is the first encounter of the two with this entity. So, this happened to me when I was pretty young. When I tell people about how old I was when this occurred, they're shocked that I could still even remember it, but they usually don't believe me. I was 3, and I know what you're thinking, but I remember this clear as day, and a few years ago when I asked my mom about it because I had always just thought it was some weird dream, but it was so vivid that it stuck with me even now, but my mom told me that it actually happened, and I'm seriously freaked out. As a child, I would tell everybody who listened about this thing I saw, referring it to as Bad Mommy, because at the time the thing had such a striking resemblance to my mom. Anyway, on to the experience. Like I said, this happened when I was 3, and to give some backstory, I just lived with my mother. We lived in a very small trailer-like home, in the living room and kitchen in one area with a long hallway that led to a master bedroom and bathroom. We had no electric heating, only a plug-in furnace thingy in my mom's room. Anyway, I was wandering around the house, doing things 3-year-olds do, I guess. I don't really know how to explain that. My mom wasn't around, so I decided to go to her room, which is at the end of the dark hallway. The walk to her room seemed long, probably because I'm waddling like a penguin, and I remember not being able to see anything. But I hear something, like a drip drop, almost as if something was dripping on the hard wood. But I kept walking again. Drip drop. But this time I hear something else. Chris. My name whispered behind me. To be honest, I don't remember getting scared, but thinking back, I should have been. At first I guessed that I thought it was my mom or something, because that height and body plus color length all matched my mom's, but the lady that was in front of me definitely wasn't my mom. A woman who appeared in front of me seemingly soaking wet. I was able to see her fairly clearly compared to everything else. She had long black hair covering most of her face and a long sleeve white nightgown that was dripping. Her skin seemed so pale even in the dark it looked almost bluish green. I could hear the drip drop, and it was coming from her. She was soaking wet. My 3-year-old self asked, "Mommy?" Like, in a confused way. Thinking back, I'm scared shitless, but back then I was like, oh, a strange lady in my house. But oddly, she didn't make any sounds or anything after I called her mommy. She just looked happy. But oddly, she just kept looking down at me, which is one thing my 3-year-old self thought was weird, because people would usually pick me up or at least crouch down and talk to me. But anyway, the lady that was dripping wet smiled at me, if you could even call it that. I remember her smile so clearly. It was so creepy. It's probably the creepiest thing I've ever encountered till this day. But I smiled back, being the dumb kid I was, and being polite. Honestly, I don't know what happened after that. I think my mom came out of the room or something. Anyway, that was my first encounter with what I guess you could call a ghost. I had to learn the hard way that not all companies do a complete background check on new employees. About 10 years ago, I was working at a group home for 5 high-functioning mentally disabled gentlemen. Each of the men are assigned direct care staff to help out with everyday life, outside of work and when they are at home in the evenings. The men range from a little over 21 to early 50s. These men are unable to properly feed themselves or live in a normal life outside of assistance. Only one of the younger men, Doug, needed assistance with the shower, since he was the lowest functioning. Tommy was a short, hairy, squat man in his late 30s, with inappropriate comments to female direct care staff. Walter was in his early 40s, had the tendency to lie, a touch of a rare temper, and enjoyed winding up the other clients. Rick chain smoked like a demon, lied a lot, had a small temper too. Then there is Roland, over 6.5 feet tall, gangly, violent toward all females and known to tear out hair. Each of the gentlemen have their own bedrooms, for those curious. 3 years into the job, a guy named Corey was hired. We all discovered he had a sick wife at home, and he seemed pretty nice. I did nothing to encourage him, but it wasn't long before Corey was trying to keep our clients in the same rooms to talk to me. I got the creeps. Then, I asked for an opposite schedule of his own. He still worked shifts with me despite the request. Then, he started stalking me to the grocery store that turned out to be near his apartment. After a few days of his being there after our shifts ended, I was wigged out. One evening, he followed me home completely before I realized he had. I reported the incidents, and it wasn't taken seriously. I bleached my hair to a pale white the day before a huge meeting for work, and kept my head down. I had told Allie and another close coworker about it, but was believed by them because the idiot was asking where I was at the meeting. He finally spots me and tries to engage in a convo after the meeting, and I told him I had to assist the manager. He brushes it off until Allie told him about how Corey just followed me to the van with Rick, even though Corey wasn't on duty. Corey was immediately pulled aside and explicitly told to leave me alone. Thankfully, they started listening, but it was too late in many ways. Corey's behavior toward me pressed the managers to look further into his past. It was discovered that for the year prior he did time for raping a 17-year-old girl. To make matters worse, he had been corrupting the clients during trusted graveyard shifts in the house for months. He subjected Roland, Rick, and Walter to some hardcore pornography. He was fired shortly after. Last I knew, he was on the loose. He lives a state away, but I wish there was more distance. Roland became more violent with female direct care staff after the exposure and began to corner me after the pornography exposure from Corey. This led to my barely getting into the bathroom before Roland was able to tear at my long hair. I had to climb out the window, demanded the assigned staff get their client, and put my notice in the next day. This took place when I was about 12 years old, but I'm not going to include names of people or places. My mom had this real close friend before she left her hometown. A friend she eventually made into my godmother, despite me not having seen her in real life for over 10 years. My mom's friend was rich, like travel the world rich, and she asked me and my mom to house sit for a while she was away. She was planning on spending the next 2 years or so backpacking around Europe. My mom was really excited. It was a really nice house, one that had been in her friend's family for 3 generations and built in the middle of nowhere. It was a huge change from our little caravan. We moved in just after my 10th birthday, and when we did, my mom bought me a dog to keep me company as she worked in the hospital about an hour and a half away. I was homeschooled at the time. I mostly took classes online, but my mom also bought me a bunch of textbooks, so I was pretty much alone. My mom was working a night shift, and I was in the den, flipping through a magazine when my dog began growling. Now, Bear was a big dog, but he was always very, very quiet. I figured he was just spooked by a coyote or something, so I turned on the lights to calm him down. I didn't see anything, but now he was really going at it, growling and barking like crazy. "Calm down, boy. There's nothing out there." No matter what I did, he refused to look away from the door, and he was really beginning to creep me out. I didn't want to open the door, but I've never seen a dog as worked up as Bear was right now. Peeking out the front window, I froze. Only a few feet away, someone was standing by the front door. Now I couldn't see the person's face, but I could recognize that jacket anywhere. It was my mom's jacket. I knew because I could see the white paint I had spilled on the sleeve a few years ago. It might have been her jacket, but it sure as hell wasn't my mom. My mom is short and kinda chubby. The person on the porch was thin and extremely tall, even though they stood hunched over with their hands in their pockets. It was at this point that I lost it. Tearing up the stairs, I dragged Bear with me. We only had one phone in the house, a landline in the main bedroom upstairs. Dialing 911, I was bawling my eyes out when the operator picked up. The woman assured me that the cops would be there as soon as possible, urging eyes to stay in the line as she tried to calm me down. At this point, I was curled up beneath the bed with the phone in one hand and my other arm wrapped around the still growling dog. A knocking on the window startled me and I screamed, burying my face in Bear's fur, not wanting to look at the gaunt, grinning face. I can't for sure say how long I was laying there, but it felt like years. Finally, I began to hear the sirens. The cops never found the guy, but my mom refused to spend another night in the place. She swore that she had left the jacket in her closet, which means he had been inside the house. My mom's friend wasn't too happy with cutting back her backpacking trip, but my mom refused to ever come back, so she didn't exactly have a choice. Until my mom's friend could get back, my mom moved us into our caravan into the smallest town next door. We haven't been back since, but I still have nightmares about that face, more specifically the eyes. Pale, pupilless eyes that seemed far too big. This story is not as scary or eerie as it is creepy. In 2016, America was immersed in a clown epidemic. That's right, a clown epidemic. People were dressing as clowns, trying to terrorize and scare people. A friend, Paul, and I had just delivered a load of pipe to a plant in Blytheville, Arkansas. We are now at the Loves down the road taking our pipe stakes off our trailers. My pipe stakes are about 4 to 5 feet tall and weigh about 30 to 40 pounds each. They are inserted into slots on the side of the trailer to help keep loads like pipe from coming off and rolling down the road. Anyways, it's after dark and I'm standing on my trailer, lugging these things to the holding box. On my head rack, when Paul says, "What the hell?" I turn around to see a clown, standing under a streetlight staring at Paul and I with his head turned slightly like a puppy does when it begs. It looked like it was holding a hatchet or a short axe in his hand. Paul says, "If that mother effer comes over here, I'm gonna split his skull with this goddamn pipe stake." I can't be sure the clown heard him, but as soon as the words left his mouth, it began walking towards us, almost as if it was to challenge what Paul had just said. After a few steps forward, the clown began repeating the line, "Hi, my name is Poggles the Clown and I want to show you how to tie a knot." Eventually, he was at the end of our trailers, looking back and forth, his head moving much like a fan on spin mode. Paul shouted, "Get your ass away from my trailer, or I'll sink your face in with this pipe." I'm already super freaked out, because I hate clowns to begin with, and this guy is freaking Paul out, who is a lot bigger than I am, so that lets me know I need to be worried too. The clown ignores Paul's warning and starts walking between our trailers, still repeating his little line, but as he makes it to where Paul and I stand, he finishes, My name is Poggles, the clown, and I want to show you how to tie a knot in your veins." At this moment, Paul owns up to his promise and rears back with one full golf-style swing and hits the clown in the face with the pipe. The clown falls to the ground. I jump from my trailer and rush to my truck and call the police. Paul picks up the clown's axe and places it on his trailer, out of reach, and then sits on the clown to ensure he doesn't move, but we both know he's not moving. The cops arrive at about 15 minutes later with an ambulance and take the clown in, leaving Paul after several minutes of questioning. Paul and I walk inside and grab a bite to eat before turning in for the night. Around 4 a.m. I hear a knock, but it's not on my truck. It sounds like it's next door. Thinking someone may be messing with the truck next to me, I jump up to check and look at Paul's truck. The truck on the other side of me, but nothing is there, so I lay back down to go to sleep. A few minutes pass and I hear another sharp knock, this time almost like someone is pounding on the side of the truck next to me, and I hear a shout. "Hey motherfucker, what are you doing?" It comes from Paul's direction, but it isn't Paul. I jump up to see who it is. It's a man with a bag of fast food and a flashlight looking up at Paul's headache rack. Paul and I simultaneously exit our trucks to see what's going on. We walk back to the back of the sleeper and see that the same clown Paul hit earlier is there. But how? He had been taken away from the cops. Paul and the other man drag the clown off his truck and wrestle him to the ground. I again call the police, who arrive somewhat faster this time and arrest the clown a second time. Paul thanks the driver, who explains he had walked in to get food when he thought he saw a clown crouching on Paul's catwalk, fiddling with his airlines. This is when he wrapped his flashlight around Paul's sleeper and shouted. Paul thanked him, and we both decided to leave before Poggles can come back for more. When me and my troublesome friends were 13 years old, one of the mischievous things that we did was every Saturday night go to play Ding Dong Ditch. 10 years ago, we lived at the same block in a little suburban neighborhood. At the time, there was a lot less houses and a lot more woods. For privacy, I'm going to change my friends' names. There was Mark, James, and Matt. Mark and James were the ones to go and knock on the doors, and me and Matt were the ones that would usually go hide. We hit 5 or 6 houses that I remember, that all the men that answered the doors gave pretty much the same reactions. They step up into the stoop, or yelled for a bit. One guy yelled that he was calling the cops, so we ran out of there as fast as we could. As I mentioned 10 years ago, in this neighborhood there were patches of woods where the house stands today. On the next block over there were patches of woods surrounding some of the houses. The houses on this block seemed to be more unkept than the first houses on the block that was across the street. This was perfect for a hiding spot. This house was kind of run down with tall grass and a ratty old car with a cover on it in the driveway. Overall, just a small house. Mark went to ring the doorbell. He barely made it across before a man about 6 feet tall with a stocky build came out of the house. He wasn't like the other guy. This guy was angry. Immediately, he walked around his whole yard checking the bushes, screaming threats. We all laughed as we did, and he eventually went inside. Mark waited a few more minutes, checked the windows, and then went up to the porch and rung the doorbell again. I didn't feel jealous with this house. I would not be bold enough to ring that man's door again. The door opened more quickly this time, and the man came out with a rifle. We all looked at each other with a face that said, "Oh shit," under our breaths. The man checked the same places as before, and a few other ones. This time, like behind his car, behind the trees, and then he went into his lawn and just stood there for a few moments. Pasted, and the guy started staring in our direction. We were scared shitless. We ducked and hoped that he didn't see us. After 10 minutes of staring, he went inside his house and started looking out the window, standing there like a statue, looking in our direction once again. We saw Mark creeping to the man's front door, and there was nothing we could do. we were too afraid to move or yell at him. Mark rang the doorbell once again, and the man didn't move for at least another minute. He turned away and walked away from the window. We didn't see Mark. We were too nervous to say run or anything. Next thing I know, I remember we heard Mark's voice yelling across the street, yelling, "Run!" We didn't understand at first until we heard someone running up from behind us, realizing upon turning our heads that it was the man from across the street pointing his rifle at us. We ran like prey from a predator. To Mark, who was waiting for us across the street, we heard a gunshot and one of the bullets hit a tree that was right next to us. We lost our shit and we ran as fast as we could. We seemed to have lost him. Mark explained that when he yelled, he saw the man sneaking across the street into the patch of woods with his gun. We didn't report him or anything because we were too scared. We luckily left that house and never messed with it again though. Every time I think about this story, it still gives me nightmares. But I know that I'm never going ding-dong ditching ever again. I'm 17, and I'm from Australia, and this is my stalking. Something you need to know about me. I look older than I really am. I honestly look like I'm 18 or 19, and that's with a bare minimum amount of makeup. But yet, if I have a shit ton of makeup on, I can look like I'm 21. So I have to take 2 trains as well as a bus to get to and from school. So of course, I caught the bus and the 2 trains like I normally do every day. But before I got on the bus, I changed out of my school uniform and into a tank top, shorts, and black boots. A couple years ago, I had a friend who nearly got abducted on public transport. We both believed that it was because she was in her school uniform. If she wasn't, then that asshole that tried to abduct her wouldn't have noticed her. So, that was why I always changed after school. So I got on the bus. I didn't have anyone with me. I'm more of a loner, and I honestly don't like a lot of company. I just like to be by myself and read. So the bus that I was on reached the train station. I got ready to get off and go to the 5th platform for the train that I was catching. The train arrived and I got on, and after 2 stops, I got off, went to the 2nd platform to wait for my next train. As I was waiting, I was looking at all the people that I might be on the same carriage as. As I was looking around, there was this guy. He locked eyes with me for about a second, then I looked away. He was wearing a black hoodie, gray sweatpants, and he seemed like he was in his late 20s or early 30s. He really did seem harmful, but yet he didn't seem harmless, if that makes any sense. The train arrived and I got on the last carriage like I always did, because the end carriage was always less crowded, and apparently, Black Hoodie Guy had the same idea, because he followed me to the last carriage and got on as well. I never liked sitting on the seats on trains because you never know who has been on them, or what has been on them, so I like to stand, and guess what? Black Hoodie Guy stood right next to me, and occasionally glancing over at me, which really annoyed me, but yet I just pretended that I didn't see what he was doing, and just started playing on my phone, which to my dismay was nearly dead. Of course it was, because I use it too much in class. The train came to a stop, and I got off since it was my stop, and you guessed it, so did Black Hoodie Guy. That's when it hit me. I had to walk home that day because my mother was at the hospital visiting a friend, so she couldn't pick me up from the station. As I was walking, I glanced behind me, and what do you know? Black Hoodie Guy is still following me. He sees that I notice him, but yet he doesn't do anything about it. I then grab my phone out of my back pocket and try to contact a friend of mine just to make myself calm down slightly, but yet, none of them answered. This day was just getting worse and worse. I could feel his eyes burning into the back of my head, and I could see him out of my peripheral vision as I rounded a slight corner, and he was about 30 feet behind me. At this point, he had been following me for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I had had enough. So I took my phone out of my pocket and called one of my friends, and obviously they didn't pick up. But I didn't really care. All I wanted was for him to get the point and leave me alone, because I wasn't playing games. I didn't look behind me for about 2 minutes, and when I did he was gone. So I quickened my pace and just hoped he wouldn't pop out of nowhere and take me. I've never seen him before that day, and until this day, I've not seen him since. My story begins in 2010. I was a little shit and I had one brother. My parents were going through a divorce at the time while my mom was having an affair. With me being 6, I had no idea, so of course I never told my parents. Well, I woke up and turned on the TV. I was bored and eating cereal when my dad came in the living room with his hands over his face. When I looked back on it, his voice was shaky. I failed to mention earlier that I had a very small Pomeranian. In case you don't know what a Pomeranian is, it's a dog that looks like a little bit bigger than a Chihuahua. My dad asked me to take the dog outside and walk it. I got excited because in the past, my dad never let me take the dog out by myself. My parents worked a lot, so I went to a babysitter a lot. Well, my brother was spending the night at my babysitter's house, so I was alone with my mom and my dad. My mom was inside. I went over to the neighbor's house and sat underneath their tree. I wasn't allowed to, but I knew my parents would come and spend time with me when I did. They never came. I sat for maybe 20 minutes, then I heard what sounded like somebody knocking on a door. That's when I realized it wasn't a door. My 6-year-old self thought nothing was happening. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. Maybe the side door. It was locked too. I started to get shaky. What if my parents forgot about me? I started banging on the door as hard as I could, with no answer. So I went to my neighbors for help. When I told them what happened, they called the police. They were acting very scared. They sent me to their guest bedroom and would not let me out. The room was completely empty. A policeman came and took my statement. I said I heard 2 door knocks and a knock on the wall. I was trying to get in, but I couldn't get in. He shook his head, and this policewoman came and took me to McDonald's. I remember her being very beautiful. Well, after that, I was taken to my babysitter's house. After maybe a year, my grandma tried to adopt me, but died of heart problems after losing the court case. I do not remember her name, thus not having that police report. What happened to my parents was that my dad shot my mom and then committed suicide. I'm not trying to be like, whoa, but I just had to tell it. Thanks for listening. My name is Mike, and it was a normal Friday night when I was around 15 years old. I had been going to the gym for a little over 1.5 years by then, so I was in good shape. I was going to a party with one of my friends. It was just outside the city, so we had to take the bus to get there. We were walking to the bus when Emma, my friend, said, "Hey, want to buy a gram or 2 to smoke it before the party?" And I answered, "Sure, but I don't have much money, so can you take it?" "Sure," Emma answered. I have had a crush on Emma ever since I met her, which was at a party. Long wine red hair, blue eyes, and I mean she was just beautiful. She called someone to meet up to buy some weed at a dark old park. She said we would walk there, but I said that we could just take the bus. But she pleased me to go. I don't know why she wanted to walk there, so I agreed. When we got there, our dealer was waiting for us and he said, "So what are you guys up to tonight?" I said, "Just going to a party." I didn't really think about it at the time. But there was a fully blacked out SUV with tinted windows in the parking lot beside it. The engine was on. I saw someone with a red and lime green beanie in the car, but I didn't say anything to Emma since she would probably just be scared. Emma handed in the money and got the stuff, so we went up to a mountain pretty close to the park. It was just a big area of grass with a bench looking out on the city. We sat down and rolled up 2 spliffs. The view was amazing. You could see a lot of the city. I lighted one of the spliffs and started talking about relationships and such. I asked if she wanted to tell me who she had a crush on, and she just smiled and started touching my thigh, going up to my crotch area, and we started making out. I thought this was the night that I was going to get laid. By now, we had forgot about the party. We froze as we heard a car engine down the road, since there was no reason for someone to go up here in the middle of the night. But the road was very crappy with a lot of turns and holes in the ground, so we had some time to go to hide. We really needed that time since we were so baked and we barely knew what we were doing. I told her that we needed to hide, so we went down on the side of the mountain. I stayed a little further up so I could just see what they were doing. And guess what came up? The black SUV. The guy inside the car with the red and lime green beanie went out and started to rush at me. He must have been up to something or on something. I didn't know what to do, so I grabbed my knife that I always kept on me in case something like this was to happen. He just stared at me and smiled, while rushing towards me, not even reacting when I pulled up the knife. He jumped on me and tried to bite me. I stabbed him in the leg. I screamed for Emma to run away. I pushed him off me and started to run down just after Emma. The guy tried to run after us, but was bleeding a lot and couldn't run on the leg. So we booked it down the mountain. We couldn't hear the car, so we assumed he passed out from the blood loss. We told each other not to talk about that guy ever again. That was when Emma said, "What about the party? I forgot about it." I looked at my phone and it was 1 a.m. It's probably over by now, so let's just go home. "You could come to stay a night at my place," she said, smiling at me. We went to Emma's place, had some fun, and by the morning, I went home and my parents were on vacation in Greece, so no one was the wiser. When I came home, I realized that the power was out. I don't actually know what to do, so I just went down to the basement because I knew my dad had a power generator down there. I turned on the lights, and I found the red lime greenie on the floor. I was so scared I couldn't stay at home. I stayed at Emma's place after a while, and we moved out of the house for other reasons. This happened about a year ago, and I haven't told anyone yet. This happened when I was roughly 8 years old. I'm 26 now, and I will always remember this. My family and I went to a Six Flags for the day and ended it at the water park. There is a large water slide towards the back of the water park, and the slide ends in an area where no one else is around, and you have to walk back to get back to the water park. Anyways, I was by myself as I was on the stairs waiting in line for my turn. A man came up behind me and I felt his body touch my butt. I figured maybe he didn't realize he was touching me. I wasn't sure, so I moved away the best I could and he moved with me. I felt my heart racing. I was wondering if this man was touching me with his crotch, but I was too scared to look at him. When the line moved, I stepped up a step and there he was again, up against my butt. So, the next time the line moved, I decided I needed to see exactly which part of this man's body was touching me. And lo and behold, as I stepped up and quickly turned my head, the only part of this man's bathing suit that was wet was his crotch. I felt so disgusted and scared. I started thinking, what would happen if he and I ended at the bottom of the water slide alone together? What would he do to me? The slide wasn't worth the risk, so I got out of the line and ran down the stairs and hid behind a friend. Sure enough, he got out of the line and followed me. I ran like hell to find my family. Sadly, I did not say anything to them because I was a wuss. As we were finally leaving, I followed behind my mother, and of course she took me directly towards him. As I passed him, all I got was the shivers. I'll never forget that day, and I always think about what possibly could have happened if I did not get out of that line. It all started about a month ago. It was the 30 days of fasting and we were on day 20. My friends and I always got dragged somewhere with our parents, kind of at a mosque, which was a Muslim equivalent of a church, where all of the adults hang out upstairs after breaking their fast and the little kids mess around in the basement. My friends and I were pretty damn bored because we didn't have much to do at that point. But then one of my friends, let's just call him Sean, suggested that we should go check out this abandoned kindergarten. At first I was pretty hesitant about it because if we got caught, our parents wouldn't live it down. Nonetheless, I decided to go. The downside was that it was pouring rain and the streets were shimmered with cars. We went to Sean's house, which was right near the mosque, to get his backpack full of flashlights and to get some food. Our friends decided to whoosh out in the end. It was just Sean and me. It took 10 minutes of walking in the pouring rain, but we got to the kindergarten. The outer parts of it were creepy. There was a lot of trash surrounding it and the doors seemed openable. Sean went up the stairs to get into the front entrance. The entrance was stairs on both sides, so I went to the left and checked out the windows. I shined my flashlight through there and started to look through it. The first thing I noticed were all of the stuffed animals. They were arranged in a weird pattern, almost spelling out a V. The window was locked tight, so I got down, and Sean gave me the sign that the front door was locked. We eventually resorted to checking out the entrance under the stairs and noticed that it wasn't locked. The locks on it were broken off, and we found a knife on the ground. It didn't look like a kitchen knife or a switchblade, more so like a butter knife. I had a really weird feeling in my stomach about this, and I suggested that we head back. Sean agreed, so we both put the flashlights back in the bag, and we were starting to walk back when we heard a noise. It sounded like heavy footsteps walking down, so we both decided to hide in the corner between the stairs and the railing. We dropped the bag and immediately stayed silent. The guy was wearing a dark gray hoodie with the hood up. The glimpse of his face showed that he had a small beard and long hair slicked back. He seemed skinny, but he was wearing baggy clothes, so it was hard to tell. His sweatpants seemed slightly too big, and he also kept his hands in his pockets. Sean and I were very uneasy, but we stayed dead silent. The guy paced around where we were, but eventually saw our bag on the ground. We were approximately 10 feet apart, but he didn't know we were there. Immediately, Sean signaled with his finger to the left, where we could run and be back in the mosque in about 5 minutes. We both knew the way there, but we were pretty damn scared. The guy eventually took the bag and was about to head inside the kindergarten, so we got ready to run. We heard the door close and we waited for about a minute before moving. We slowly went down the stairs and were about to cross the street when we heard a guy say in a very loud voice, "The rain feels pretty good, huh?" We looked back and saw the guy with a knife at his side. This time his hood was up, so you could only see the smirk on his face. He was still at the door of the front entrance, so we booked it. Dear God Almighty, I'm thankful to my track coach. The guy still had the book bag, but we were just lucky to get away. We didn't see the guy anywhere and eventually made it back. We dried off with towels in the mosque bathroom and took our jackets off. Sean said he didn't mind losing the bag of flashlights since they were old ones that he had lying around. The only downside is, it was his school book bag. It still might have his name and address on there, so hopefully that bearded man that had a knife doesn't come and try to find us. Hey guys, thanks for watching this video. It's very much appreciated. If you enjoyed these stories, please hit that thumbs up button as it helps the video grow to more people. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, as I upload new videos just like this one almost every single day. If you have a creepy story or something you'd like to share on the channel, be sure to send it in to the email or the website that you can find in the description down below. Many of you guys ask me all the time in the comments section how you can support the channel outside of giving the videos a like and a subscribe. Well, the best way to do that is checking out the merch store here that you see on screen. There's plenty of cool designs ranging from the Park Ranger series all the way down to Swamp Dweller logos. It's much appreciated if you check it out, and I definitely would love to see pictures of you guys wearing your Swamp Dweller merch. So send those in so I can share those in future videos.